So with Ovechkin's 1,000th point and Crosby hitting 983, I figure, you know, that 1,000 point club, and I mentioned it before, but it really is going to get to be very, very difficult to find 1,000 point scorers. Now, Henrik Sedin has 996. Daniel Sedin has 965. Daniel Sedin over the last few weeks and his play and his point totals have me starting to wonder if he's going to make 1,000 points. And I know it's only 1,000 points out, but with the way Daniel's been playing lately, I wouldn't be surprised if he retires this year. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But his play has really fallen off in terms of his offense. Shane Doan's next up at 956. I don't think Doan hits it either. He's only got 11 points so far in 40 games. So he'd have to play and score 44 more points. So he'd have to play next year too. And I don't think he will. Henrik Zetterberg has 864 with his health and his diminishing returns. I don't know that he has another 136 points left before he retires. Jason Spetz is at 837. I'm not sure with him either. Eric Stahl's at 860, and I don't think he's going to hit 1,000 before he's done. Because even with his resurrection, well, okay, Eric Stahl, maybe. Evgeny Malkin's at 803. He'll hit 1,000. That's a guy I look at and say, okay, he's got 1,000 points written all over him. Mike Ribeiro's at 790. He won't hit it. Marian Gabourik's at 778. He won't. Ryan Getzlaf's at 771. I maybe. Rick Nash is at 753. No, I don't think he'll hit it. Patrick Kane's at 708. He will. So there's 1,000 point scorer. Anze Kopitar 704. The way he's playing this year, the offense is dried up. He's got 3 goals right now. I don't see it happening with him either. Corey Perry, it's not easy. He's at 695. He's at 305 more points. Now, at the rate he's scoring now, that's another 5 years. It's a maybe that Perry plays another 5 years. He should. And he's also got to stay healthy for those years. Nicholas Backstrom's at 676. I think he'll be 100 or 1,000 point scorer before he retires. Thomas Vanek's at 675. I don't think he will. Matt Collins at 674. Clearly not. Scott Hartnell at 670. No. Justin Williams at 655. No. Zach Parise at 639. No. Patrice Bergeron at 635. I love Bergeron. No. Jason Pominville 631. Jeff Carter 621. Phil Kessel 618. Mike Camilleri 603. Joe Pavelski 601. I don't know. I don't see any of them being 1,000 point scorers. Patrick Sharp 587. Zdeno Chara 585. Clearly, no. Jonathan Taves 585. Not at the rate he's scoring this year. That all-star selection for Taves is just baffling. Nico Koivu 584. The next one I find that should be able to is Stamkos at 582. He's got to stay healthy though. Verbata's 578. Stastny's 575. Gionta 571. Plekanec 571. Kunitz 568. Fisher 568. Hemsky 565. Markov 557. Claude Giroux 552. See, let's take a look at Giroux. Okay, so Giroux's got 552 points in 617 games. He'd have to keep up his current pace in terms of his points per game. I swear I can talk. And he'd still end up having to play approximately 1,200 games to get to the 1,000 point mark. So 1,000 points for old fart fans like myself is a much higher bar now than it was when we were youngins. And I feel like doing an old prospector voice at this point and talking about the good old days. But all kidding aside, it is so difficult now for a player to put up those kinds of point totals. And it's funny because, let me just see here. It should be in here. At the same time as this is going on, wins. So for goaltenders, wins, which is, usually such a high bar. 691 is the record for Martin Brodeur. I don't think anybody's going to hit that. But for Roberto Luongo, he's at 448. Curtis Joseph's at 454. Belfour's at 484. Waugh's at 551. I don't see him being able to catch Waugh, but I think he beats Joseph and Belfour before he retires. And I think Luongo is first or second ballot Hall of Famer. Henrik Lundqvist at 392. I think he'll end up with about 500 before he retires. I don't know if he'll be much above that. Marc-Andre Fleury's at 370. He has 2 more years than Lundqvist, 4 less than Luongo. It all depends on where he goes. See, Fleury's likely not going to be a Penguin next year, so those sweet win totals he's put up over the last 8 years are probably going to drop off. Ryan Miller's at 352 wins. With 2 more wins, he'll pass Nabokov for 20th. With 4 more wins, he'll pass Rogie Vachon for 19th. It's an accomplishment, but it shows that when you've got all these guys in the top 20 who are current goaltenders, it's a weird switch. Okay, Cam Ward's at 285. Kerry Leightonen's at 282. He's 39th on the all-time list for goaltender wins. And Kerry Lehtinen doesn't belong ahead of these guys. Kerry Lehtinen in wins is ahead of Bernie Perrant, Marty Turco, Kelly Rudy, Joe Meloche, Don Beaupre, Felix Potvin, John Sebastian Jaguar, Ken Dryden, Frank Brimsek, Johnny Bauer, George Hainsworth, Pete Peters, Kirk McLean, Bill Ranford, Jocelyn Thibault. Like, the fact that Thibault as well, from 93 to 08, got 238 wins and passed Eddie Johnson, Chico Resch. Like, so while we have this setup where scoring leaders are okay, the highest scoring career leader right now. Oh, I don't want goals. I want points. So, Jágr comes up as number 2, right? Jágr's number 2 on the all-time points list. He's played hockey for 165 years. And then next is 25th place, Joe Thornton with 1367. Thornton is, let's say he gets 33 points in the second half, finishes with 1,400. He'll be top 20 in all-time scoring leaders, which is strange. But he'd pass Johnny Busick, Mike Modano, Brett Hull, Luc Robitaille, Jari Kurri, and slot right underneath Dale Hawerchuk, the forgotten man with 1,409 points. Jerome Iginla's next up at 1,284. He's 34th on the all-time list, and then you have to go all the way down to 58th, where you find Hossa at 1114, all the way down to 67th, where you find Marleau at 1055. Patrick Elias is at 76th with 1025. He still shows as active, but we all know that he's done. And then Ovechkin, with his 1,000th point, he's 84th on the all-time points list. Closing in on Brian Propp, Lanny McDonald, Steve Larmer, Pat LaFontaine. If he gets up to, say, 1,030 by the end of the year, he'll be up to 74th on the all-time list. But it is really, really weird. Let's see. Come on, where is it? I'm looking for shutouts here too. Because shutouts is one that we use quite a bit as what a great goaltender guy is. Rightfully so. Number 1 overall is Martin Brodeur with 125. Next up, Terry Sawchuk at 103. Luongo's 11th on the list right now, 73. Lundqvist is 17th with 60. Marc-Andre Fleury's 31st with 43. He's tied with Gump Worsley. Jonathan Quick is next up with 42. Pekka Rinne has 41. He's 35th overall of all time. Halak is 37th with 40 of them. So again, there's this weird. If you're a young forward right now, gaining entry into the top 100 scorers is extremely hard. For goaltenders, being top 100 for wins or shutouts is completely reachable. Because there are far more shutouts, and thanks to shootouts and overtimes, there's far more wins being handed out. It's just one of those things that I always think of whenever I discuss scoring leaders. Now, let's go back to goals, because this is really where I find what Ovechkin did tonight in passing Maurice Richard. I find it shocking. So Ovi's got 545 goals now. If you look ahead of him, you got Yager with 756. Well, that goes back to 1990. Jerome McGinley 616 goes back to 1996. Jerome McGinley, genuinely a fantastic sniper. But where Ovi's at right now, like let's say he scores 20 in the second half. He passes Nieuwendyk, Sundin, Modano, Guy Lafleur, Johnny Busick, Ron Francis, and Michel Goulet. And if he finishes with 565, so if he scores 21 goals in the second half, he's 22nd overall in goals for. And then he is within. So that's the thing too. We're realistically, let's say he retires and he plays this year and he retires in 2 more years. Let's say he gets 80. That's about 100 more goals. He would finish ahead of Dave Andreychuk, behind Brendan Shanahan. He'd be 14th all time on the goals list. And I honestly think, because a lot of the guys above him played a lot more games. Gretzky, Gordie Howe, Yager's up there. Of course, Yager's played a ton of games. Brett Hull, Marcel Dion, Phil Esposito. The interesting thing, too, is that they've got WHA leaders on this site. This is hockey-reference.com. And Gordie Howe did have 174 goals in the WHA. So technically, Gordie Howe had 975 goals professionally. Not that the NHL recognized him, which is a shame because Mark Tardif had 316 goals in 6 seasons in the WHA. He is 13 goals ahead of Bobby Hull, who had 303. So Bobby Hull had 913 professional goals in the NHL and WHA. But again, those goals are not recognized by the WHA or by the NHL, so they kind of get forgotten. Actually, this is an interesting list too, because Real Cloutier is there with 283. Andre Lacroix at 251. Anders Hedberg at 236. Serge Bernier 230. This is all WHA. Tom Webster 220. Danny Lawson 218. Robbie Ftorek 216. Mark Howe, who was a defenseman, 208 goals in 6 years. Rich Leduc 195, and then it gets more into the sort of the rest of them. Very interesting, though. Because if the NHL recognized those totals, then, even Gretzky isn't the number 1 goal scorer of all time. Bobby Hull is. No. Shannon, your math is off. Gordie Howe would be number 1, 975. And number 2 would be Bobby Hull with 913. I had a nap. I'm still clueless. I needed a longer nap. And Mark Tardif, who I'll click on. Tardif was genuinely a very, very good player. He played in the NHL for 4 years, had 116 goals, so he had a combined 380 goals. But in the WHA, he had 579 points in 348 games. In the NHL, he had 244 points in 272 games. Man, the totals back then. Yeah, he had four seasons in the NHL, too. In the late 60s, early 70s. 245 games, 157 points. Makes you sometimes wonder, like, if there was ever a competing league again, if ever anybody tried to do that again, how would that work? It's just fun to look at. I just wonder, like, out of the current crop of players, I went through trying to find guys who are going to hit 1,000. There's not a lot of them. Let me know in the comments below who you think is going to hit 1,000 points. And are we going to reach a point in time where 1,000 points is so rare that it gets like some. I know you're going to get a plaque. You're going to have your kids at center ice. You're going to have a quiet stadium, and the lights will be out, and everybody will love you for that night. Are we going to hit a point where 1,000 points is so rare that there's an even bigger ceremony of some sort? Like maybe it's an even bigger deal to hit 1,000 points. It just feels like that's where we're headed. Not that it's going to matter. Even when Henrik Sedin scores his 1,000th point, all I'm going to hear about is how Sedin sisters this and Sedin sisters that. Because that's the old criticism, and it's old and it's lame. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. And yeah, it's just weird because I always think of the goaltenders too, because the goaltenders, there's so many shutouts, there's so many wins being handed out that I could see somebody threatening Martin Brodeurs records across the board at some point. I don't know who would do it, but I can see it happening. I just can never see it happening for any of Gretzky's records, or no matter how long somebody plays. Sorry, Yager, I just don't see it. And the eras have changed, but it just seems like it's going further and further and further towards defense. Scoring is going down every single year. This year, I haven't looked at the stats lately, but scoring has to be down again this year. Has to be at a record low. It just has to be. I think, and it's weird because some games are really exciting with 2-1 scores, but there are games I've been watching lately where the life just seems to get sucked out of them. That both coaches are playing defense, both coaches are playing not to lose, and it can make for some really slow hockey at very few shots and very little happening, and it can be really hard to watch. Again, and you can let me know what you think in the comments about that too. Yeah, so again, just I figured, we're on the topic of scoring tonight. I'd take a look at that and let me know what you think. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing through. Thanks for watching.